How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Today, we are going to answer a viewer's question. And this actually comes out from California. And I got a good friend of mine, my co-host on the Tier Talk podcast, Russ Hamilton. Russ, how are you, brother?
Doing great, Anthony. It's great to be on the show again and to be busy and doing stuff. I'm sitting here in my vehicle. And I kind of like doing these vehicle shows. I think they're kind of fun. You know, it's just something I'm running around town. I'm here in the parking lot at Lowe's, and I'm ready to, take your question. Haven't even heard it yet.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Those vehicle videos were born out of necessity for me, trying to do what I can in between work and home. But, yeah, this is going to be a very interesting question. I think you're going to have some fun with it. And I definitely think there's a lot of good information. I'm sure the person that asked me the question is not the only person going through something like this. But real quick, guys, if you haven't, don't forget we do have the Tier Talk podcast. We have about 6 episodes that have been released. The most recent one was released today, which is about working overnights. And the link to the podcast is in the description. Very good episodes, and you can download them for free. You can find them on Law Enforcement Today Network or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. There's a few places. But when we come back from our sponsor, we're going to answer our viewer's question, which deals with, give you a little hint of what it deals with before I read it in detail, is when you're a rookie and you feel that your partners who are seniors are just not being effective with their job, maybe complacency, but we'll read into it in more detail. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks to you, brave men and women that work in correction. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor. We come back. I'll read the question, and then me and Russ will hopefully give out some good advice. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Guys, inmate manipulation is a course that is highly needed. It's the process that's so slow moving and subtle that you don't realize it's happening. When inmates choose to manipulate, they manipulate our need to react. Situational awareness and insight is going to save your career. It's going to save you from doing foolish things. Listen to your gut. So the more insight we have, the more we can recognize what isn't so overt, and we can correct our behavior before we fall into a trap that we can't get out of. If you allow an inmate to pull you out of your prescribed role, you are opening up a door for a host of problems.
Inmate manipulation, the psychology behind inmate manipulation. Available now. Link in description. All right, and we're back. Okay, Russ, so this actually comes, I believe, out of California. Not going to say the person's name. We're going to keep things very general. So I'm going to read it off. And there's a few questions in here, so we'll just identify it and then just go off. And then it's going to be a very quick show. Hi, I'm very new to Tier Talk, and I'm very excited that there's a channel dedicated to breaking down the thankless job and even offering words of encouragement. So thank you. I have a request for a video. I'm a rookie when it comes to adult corrections. However, I did work with juvenile justice prior to transitioning to adult corrections. So I know my opinion is not often valid or warranted when it comes to how we should do our jobs, but I'm having concerns and I do not know how to approach them with my superiors. I work the overnight shift and I like to stay busy because I know if I don't stay busy, then I'm going to eventually succumb to catnapping. I tend to find things to do. So I was instructed by a sergeant that I should be mindful of the empty lockers because that's where the inmates tend to hide things. So one night, I did as instructed and found a large bag of hooch, or buck, as we call it. My coworker congratulated me, and of course, my superior disposed of it. Another night, I did another random search of empty lockers and found a shank. Now, each dorm on our camp is split by 4 wings, A, B, C, D wings. One officer has A and B. I had C and D. No one did those searches but me, not even after I found the weapons. My discovery did not elicit the least bit of urgency from my coworkers, and they didn't bother to attempt to search their areas. Common sense tells me if I found them on my wings, you're going to find them on yours. It actually, this is maybe an error here. It actually do me asking my coworker if he wanted to switch wings so that I could search his side, where I also found another shank made from a razor blade. I don't want praise for doing my job, but it would be nice if, while reviewing cameras, as he so often does and tends to point out our flaws, if my lieutenant would acknowledge that rookies are finding weapons because they are constantly moving and doing as instructed. It's even getting frustrating that things are being allowed on shifts when they're not allowed on mine. I realize the virus has really set the tone for our prisons, and many inmates have expressed concerns. As I did my searches both nights, I found bottles of cleaning solution stuffed under lockers. I, as an officer, don't mind if they use the solution. I just want the bottle back. I've even allowed an inmate a small amount so that he felt like he could clean the toilet seat before sitting down. I don't mind that, but I want the bottle, and I want the new bottles the inmates are getting their hands on. But the other shifts are allowing them to get the stuff without ever returning it, and that I have a problem with, because then the inmate takes it out on me, and the tone changes quickly. Another very frustrating moment was when it came time to dispose of the second shank I found. One sergeant didn't know where it was supposed to go, so he sent me to another one. All the while, I held the blade wrapped in some toilet paper in my hand. Now, these were not my regular sergeants. I work until 6 a.m., and my superiors leave at around 4 when the new rotation sergeant and lieutenants come in. They are always hateful and very rude, but I did as instructed. But I got a problem. If I can't come to you as my superior, whether you are on my shift or not, and you don't know how I am to dispose of a weapon, that raises an issue for me. Help me, please. There's a lot going on there, right, Russ?
Yes, there is. And, first of all, let me say, thank you to that individual for, having that proactive mindset and wanting to, delve into this and try and help keep people safe. It's really easy, on those overnight shifts and stuff to just think that you can get by with the least little amount and that you don't really have to search that much. We just did a podcast on that, as a matter of fact. So, the thing that I want to tell you is first of all, keep up the good work, right? What you want to do is you want to be pro-correctional modeling. You want other people to follow your lead and to follow your example. And the chances are is that it might happen to some extent, but you might have to take some flack for it. That's okay. I was in a situation similar to this, but actually very late in my career, just weeks from retirement, where I had people complaining about the amount of shanks I was finding because they said it was making other people look bad. Well, I wasn't making anybody look bad. They were making themselves look bad. So, one of the things to take into account is, okay, first of all, stick with it and keep going, keep finding that stuff, keep doing what you're doing. The second thing that you want to do is you want to nail down what your specific, duties are with requirement to reporting this and toward being able to try and bring some other people onto your side of it to try and help with the safety and security. Now, I'll tell you one thing about finding a shank or finding something else that would normally be a felony, and that is whether you think you should or not, process it as evidence. And the reason that you do that is for a couple of reasons. It's always possible that in the next day or so, that maybe someone will be attacked with a similar weapon, and that might lead us toward the individual. We might also, at that point, there's a lot of things going on here, but with regards to the time, they probably aren't going to want to dust it for prints, but it could happen. I found one time where the guy had mashed his finger into a piece of plastic and left a perfectly good patent print on it. So we always want to, process it as evidence. And even if we don't find a way to charge that individual, what we can do is we can get an idea where maybe some of these materials are coming from and what they're using in order to make the weapon, and maybe we can stem that. The other thing that comes to mind when I'm talking about nailing it down is I found weapons made with tape before, and they tear it, and that tear leaves a specific pattern. So sometimes if you're in a locker and you find, a roll of tape, maybe you'll luck out. Maybe that specific pattern's on that one. Probably not going to be able to use it in court, but you might be able to use it as a local disciplinary thing where the standard is only a preponderance of evidence rather than reasonable doubt. So, that's the best that I can tell you, except that you've got to get some supervisors on board too. And it's very hard when you're below those supervisors to push them in that direction. But eventually, maybe people will start taking your lead. The other thing that might happen, though, is they just might get resentful. Either way, water off a duck's back. Don't let it bother you. Keep moving forward.
Yeah, I want to add also, because a lot of it also deals, by the way, Russ, holy crap, that was great. I just want to add that, we have to basically make sure we motivate our people to do the right thing, right? So all because I'm a rookie, it's not going to stop me from going to the experienced officers and saying, hey, listen, I'm finding these things, maybe, you should be able to do some searches, or I'm not telling the person, but I'm letting them know. Like you said, I'm not making you look bad by finding these things. You're doing it to yourselves. And sometimes people, when they're on these shifts long enough, they become complacent, and those rookies are that bit of energy. So technically, when you're these supervisors and you have these rookies that are coming onto your shift, you should be expecting that things are going to be found. And that's what should be motivating your shift, who's probably been, could be complacent for a while, because it happens, but these rookies are giving them energy. And what I would also do is, you want to document these sporadic searches. Now, these aren't the routine searches that you have, but these are sporadic searches. The reason why one thing is you want to document it is because you want to document what the hot spots are. That's one thing. But second thing is, if I find a weapon, let's say in one of the lockers, one of the questions that would be asked by my supervisors is, when was that area last checked? Because we all need to take accountability for the searches that we do. So if it finds out that the area was last checked there, then, go to the officer and say, hey, listen, when you did a search, was that there? Was it not there? But what it is that you're holding them accountable for actually doing what's expected of them. And if that supervisor felt that that's where a good bulk of contraband could be, then that should actually be mandated searches every night. I mean, that should be something that you assign to somebody every night. It should not be something that's done at random or at will. If the moment, I'll be honest with you, the moment, like, if that was one of my rookies and they found a shank or they found some hooch, the next day, we're going to go at it again. We're going to go at it again until they know we are not messing around. But the fact is that I'm surprised that the supervisors, after finding out that there was contraband there, just didn't decide to say, hey, you know what? Let's start making part of this as our routine searches. This way, again, you get accountability, but you're also getting the job done. And again, when it comes, let's cover one more thing real quick. Just want to go back because I'm thinking of something else. When it comes to dealing with the senior officers, if you're a rookie, you still have that connection with your training officer, you should let your training officer know of these concerns, because sometimes they can have an approach with your senior staff. And I've utilized that before I went to a supervisor. So first, I would have communication with my peers. If I felt that they weren't listening to me, I would go to my training officer. If at that point no one's listening to me, then I'm going to start documenting. And even when I go to that supervisor, I'm going to document it with that supervisor. Hey, I spoke to Sergeant Russ. This is what it is. And it's not just a dialogue anymore, Russ. It's going to be something on paper, and I'm going to hold Russ accountable as a supervisor. So if these searches aren't getting done, or they're being done half-assed and not effective, well, I brought it to your attention. Because last thing that happened, man, that female who found that shank, I mean, that shank could have been in one of her people's backs. I mean, how could that not motivate you to want to continue to do searches, Russ?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's critical. The searches that I did weren't even on first watch, but, that is a red flag. When you find a weapon like that, that could be stashed there to be there in order to take staff out. It could be, excuse me, it could be stashed there for the next day when they're plotting a riot or some type of breakout or an issue like that. So, just to say, but nice job that you found that, and not to have some concern beyond just the finding of it, because that's just a shank in that place, right? Why was it there? I mean, why did they choose that moment to put that shank in that location? And does it mean something more than just, a shank that was there? Was it a rainy day shank? Well, that's all good, but we shouldn't assume that it was just a rainy day shank. We should be assuming that maybe there's some sort of operation that they're thinking about carrying out. So don't ever take that for granted. That's, one of the hallmarks of complacency is where, situational awareness perceived, but not achieved. Don't let that happen.
Well said, Russ. Now, the second question that she had dealt with the cleaning supplies. So basically, I agree with this too. This is something that's happening more now than ever, especially with the COVID. But, it's still been something that's happened before that. But so you have some items that are controlled that can hand it out, and hopefully the officer takes the ID of the individuals. And this way, if they need something back, because sometimes you can hand out stuff and you forget who you handed it to. Let's say a mop for a detail, or in this case here, cleaning supplies. You may have to hand out cleaning supplies cell by cell. Once you do that exchange, you get the inmate's ID. And that inmate doesn't get back their ID until you get your supplies back. Now, the sad thing is that these inmates right now, we could be limited supply. I mean, the real world is limited with cleaning supplies right now, the Clorox and stuff like that. So we could be limited with the supplies that are provided. So with that said, you really can't have inmates holding on to these supplies because you're going to need it for the rest of the population. So when the shift that gives it out doesn't collect it, the person that does do their job and goes to collect it, they're the bad guy now. It's like, no. This should have been collected on the other shift. No, that officer allows me to have it. No. This should have been collected on the other shift. So if that was me and I was working that unit and the next day, I went, or let's say that night I went around and collected the stuff that the officer should have collected on the prior shift, I'm going to leave a note. I'm going to say something and say, listen, I did a round. I'll even go to my area supervisor at that point, because the concern is maybe it's not just the cleaning supplies that's an issue. Maybe this person gives out razors that they're not accountable for, for hygiene. You don't know. But the thing is I'm now taking care of a mistake that's not mine, and I'm dealing with the blunt of it. So I'm going to go to supervisor and say, hey, minimal, can you do me a favor? I had to collect these supplies from, let's say, 5 or 6 cells, which should have been collected on the earlier shift the moment it was used. And now when I go to collect it, I'm getting all this negative feedback. Can you please get on or tell someone from the earlier shift that when they hand it out, please take accountability for the items? Because again, we're talking about cleaning supplies, but that, what about razors? Are those being accounted for? We don't know. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Real easy. This may or may not be a solution depending on what people are doing. Write up a policy, and then once you write up the policy and the procedure for it, and get your books for inventory and stuff like that, get the sergeant to sign off on it, and then it's in place, and then it becomes part of the post orders, and then you have to follow along. Pretty simple.
Yeah, I agree. If not policy, a supervisor memo, something. But what's funny is we talk about this as if it's 101. Maybe some places don't have that. Maybe they don't collect IDs when they're giving out items like cleaning supplies or razors. Well, hopefully if you're watching this, maybe you should. And that will definitely motivate the inmate to come back to you to get their ID. And then you can collect the items. And then it stops the officer from the later shift having to deal with the bullshit of taking the items that should have been taken back earlier. It's just not needed. And the last question she had, and maybe I'll forward this one to you, Russ, is, how when she had the contraband, the razor, and she went to give it to the supervisor, and the supervisor had no idea what to do with it.
That's completely inexcusable. You should always know what to do with contraband. Basically, with us, if it could be a felony, then we processed it as a felony, and then our investigative department, if they didn't have a way to pursue it or didn't have the time to pursue it, or it was just a dead end, then they had the option of kicking it out and getting it thrown away. If it's something that's just, hot trash and could be, potential for a weapon or some type of security breach, then, you put it in the hot trash to make sure that it gets taken outside the grounds, never to be seen inside the grounds again. It's pretty simple, and people need to pay attention to that, because we don't want to live in a littered world where there's bad stuff in it that they can take and make into weapons and caustic acid and things like that. We want to avoid that at all costs.
Right, and you touched on something before we go that I want to mention, because you touched on with the very first question, especially when it comes to weapons. even though it's caught in a public area, there may not be anybody that you can really hold accountable for it. Yeah, I mean, most likely no one's really, may not get the fingerprints, but there's so much intel that could be provided as to why that location, like you mentioned, or how it was made, which is important. Maybe there's people with similar weapons. But what I would do technically is if I was a supervisor, I wouldn't be so quick to dispose of that weapon. And mind you, we're talking about overnight shift. What I would do maybe is the next day with maintenance around and maybe with some custody that's, got some experience, let's break down, see what it's made of. Because obviously if you have a weapon, then there's something missing somewhere else. There's something that's not being accounted for somewhere else. So if this weapon was made, let's say, from a broken fan, well, we're missing the broken fan. And most likely a fan could have probably made 6 weapons. We only found 1. So there's just so much knowledge that you said, Russ, that you can gain that I wouldn't be so quick to throw away that weapon. I know a lot of people would be like, well, they can't hold people accountable and there's an amount of paper. It's not about that. It's also about information. Like you just mentioned some great stuff that I hope people realize that sometimes it's not just about holding people accountable. Sometimes about the information that weapon can provide and how you're able to figure out, okay, where are we vulnerable? Where are we vulnerable? Hey, Russ, you have anything you want to say in closing?
No, I just want to thank everyone for listening. Maybe you got one more point just on what you said. Things that are weapons are made out of. Methods of manufacture, too, are really important. Are they stealing some emery cloth out of vocations? Is that the way they're sharpening the tip? Are they melting things? Well, if they're melting, maybe we should be looking around for the little baby oil lamps and trying to destroy those. There is a lot of information and intel that you can get off of a weapon, from what it's made out of, to the method of manufacture, to the type of weapons that certain groups prefer at the moment. So, just don't assume that it's a complete dead end.
Yeah, maybe one day we'll do, Russ. We've done it before with some weapons, but maybe what we could do is we can maybe do another show where we have some weapons and we maybe break it down to the finite, and just show people like how much information you can get. I want to show people not just by telling them, but also letting them see it. So maybe we'll come up with a manufactured weapon, and then maybe you could talk us through all the information that manufactured weapon can bring that can maybe, if not find the person accountable, but maybe definitely lead to seizing more weapons. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tear Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Hey, guys, don't forget to check out the Tear Talk podcast. Doing very well. We got about 6 episodes up. And as always, guys, please stay safe.